Okay, welcome to Into the Channel, a podcast primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love the Champions League as much as your boys do, kick it with us, make a little history with us, advance to the final with us, subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen at ITC_pod on X if you're into that sort of thing. I am your host, Dino De Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Angle. What is up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. I think those were two really interesting semifinal second legs. We got there. It's been a long journey. I think there's only one thing to do, and it's to celebrate making it to the final.
Let's go. Bilbao, here we come. Now, this very special UEFA Women's Champions League semifinal recap edition of the Into the Channel podcast. So really just two options here to choose from. Not a wrong answer in the bunch. London on Saturday, Paris on Sunday. Mr. Grant Angle, where do you want to get started?
Let's start with the champions. And let me just say real quick, you're just a much more brave man than me, because there is a 0% chance anybody will ever catch me singing on the internet and putting it out there. So, I mean, shout out to you. It's why I love doing the show with you. I mean, you know.
I'm such a sucker for it. I can't resist. It's just, it's probably delightful to just me and maybe one other person out there, but I'm going to keep doing it whenever I feel it, bubbling up inside me, and I just got to let it out.
If there's one person in the world that finds it delightful, I do. So there's got to be more than just one. So I'm on your side with that. I mean, shout out to you for doing it.
That's my guy right there. I appreciate that.
So let's start with the champions. Barcelona defeats Chelsea 2-0 at Stamford Bridge, advances 2-1 on aggregate. Tough go for Chelsea. Before we get into the thing, we'll talk about the thing. But let's give some credit to Barcelona, who had to go into London. They had to make some changes to their lineup. What they did in the first leg didn't work. Chelsea looked great in Spain when they played.
Yep.
And it feels like a reasonable place for us to start with future Washington Spirit manager, Jonathan Hernández.
They're going to need him after what my pride did to them this past weekend. We'll talk about that later.
Good flex.
I like the changes. I mean, we talked about Mariona's struggles in the first match. We talked about Rolfo looking good. I think Bronze came on in the first match, looked good as well. So moving Lucy Bronze in, big game player, got to respect that move. Moving Fridolina Rolfo up the pitch, got to respect that move. And I feel like it worked out pretty well. I think the formation was interesting. They were out on the front foot. They got a little lucky. No Myra Ramirez. But credit to them. They did what they needed to do, and I think it started from the lineups.
For sure, yeah. Let me echo what you said about Lucy Bronze. Just key stops in dangerous areas of the field down the wing. She can drift into the middle, give you some control in there. I just feel like, she's a lioness. Obviously, I root for her for the English national team. There can be a little bit of a Lucy Bronze experience, though. We've seen, she had some rough moments earlier in the Champions League. You'll see them happen in Liga F from time to time. But
Lucy Goosey Bronze.
It seems like you have these types of players where it's like, when I really, really need it, she's there. But let me pass it back to you on this. There is a player who, when you really, really need it, you could always guarantee that she's going to be there. Even probably when you don't need her, she's probably going to be there.
Let's go.
I think arguably the greatest player in the world, Aitana Bonmati. This felt like a Bonmati game.
100%. I mean, she definitely reminded everybody that she's at the very mountaintop of the sport. She controlled the entire match. Her passes, her runs, her vision, her decision-making, everything was super on point. She obviously gets the goal early. She draws the penalty later. We'll talk about that one in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
She even, her IQ is such that she even, at the death of the match, kind of gingerly works her way off the pitch, maybe is she injured? What's going on? Oh, she got the announcers kind of clutching their pearls. And then she makes sure to dead sprint toward Alexia to give her a big old high five, just as a big FU to the Stamford Bridge crowd, being like, I do what I want out here, and I'm going to control the match even after I've been subbed off and have an impact even then. So I think really, really great showing. We talked about last week about Barcelona getting blanked at home, getting beat at home, having to go to Stamford Bridge. back against the wall, elimination, all that good stuff. And what would they do? Like, how would they respond? And I think to have your best player come out, set the tone, like not only like emotionally, but with her play. It was technically also. You don't always get both of those like hand in hand. Yep. She was just dominant.
I mean, for everybody who enjoys the NBA as much as your boys do, the LeBron blueprint game for the Heat against the Celtics, where it's just like, it's one of those games where it's not the championship round or it's not the final, but everybody remembers it. It's like, this is an all-timer. I kind of think this Aitana performance is going to go down like that. Like, real hoopers know. So I think when we're talking about it, like, people are just going to be like, yeah, that semifinal, she fucking dominated the game. I thought it was funny. Shout out to the Stamford Bridge crowd who showed up mega fucking big time for the match. Sold out stadium for it. They knew it was shithousery. I always think it's funny in American sports, never cheer when somebody gets hurt. Don't boo somebody when they're hurt. It's bad form. But in football, she's like gingerly walking off the pitch. And I try to be as sensitive about these things as I possibly can. She's gingerly going off the pitch. I'm like, oh yeah, she's full of shit. And like you said, though, that little piece, that was the needle that she stuck into the fans and the other team of, let me run over to Alexia real quick just to high-five her. A+ performance from her all around.
100%, yeah. And I'm a little bit jealous. I almost went to the LeBron comparison, but I'm like, it's but it's so right on the money. Like, best player in the world, doing best player in the world type shit in a huge spot. That was the first cross-sport parallel that I thought of, watching Bonmati just dominate this one. I want to scoot ahead a little bit. The ref situation.
Yes.
Situations, if you will.
Yeah.
What, where do we get started with this?
You know me well enough to know I'm a big old baby when it comes to this stuff sometimes. Now, I try to walk a line of where I hate blaming the refs for a result, and especially in this case. And, we consciously started this podcast talking about Barcelona because I think they deserve to win it. I think they deserve to advance. They played well.
Better team.
They dominated the ball in the first half. Their passes look good. We talked about they had the best player on the field who played the best. I think all that is pretty easy to say. But still, big old man baby Grant in the moment, when that second yellow comes, and first, let's get this out of the way. The first yellow on Buchanan, fair play. That was a yellow card. That was a yellow card foul. When that ref pulled out the yellow, I don't think the yellow was shown on the broadcast, but I see the red get shown. I am literally seeing red, and I'm like, fucking ref ball. God damn it, nobody's here to see you. You fucking ruined this game. I fucking hate this shit. Why? The only way, in the last podcast where I said, where of course me in my grand wisdom said, I don't think there's any way anything could happen to ruin this game. She shows the red card, and I'm like, how could you do this? This is such a horseshit way to officiate this game.
No disagreements there. I laughed a little bit because I'm going to pull back the curtain here a little bit. Grant and I share game notes before we do the show, just so we can kind of like, all right, where were you at? Where am I at? Sure. And I didn't see your game notes, right? But you texted me after the match. You're like, so, hey, man, what'd you think about the yellow card situation? Like, calm as shit. And I was just like, I didn't really like it. And then when I check your game notes, it's like, fucking fuck, what the fuck? It's just like a level like 25. You had certainly cooled off by the time you texted me to get my take on it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks. It really just sucks. I mean, players have bad moments. Very, very, very bad moment from the ref.
I think so.
But what I texted you was, I don't know if that was even the most egregious moment. Right. Because the Aitana penalty, in real time, I'm like, oh, what was that? I mean, like, she goes flying, right. and it doesn't look like there's any kind of, I'm like, maybe I missed, a clipping of the leg, or I don't know, maybe something happened that I didn't see in real time. And then they show the replay. It's pretty much Buchanan with a hand kind of like brushing up on her hip, and Lawrence kind of like on the top of her, some combination of like very, very nothing of nothing.
Yeah.
And it goes to VAR, and the penalty gets confirmed. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, that was a rough call. I couldn't help but think about the foul on Ramirez in the first match. 60-second minute. I had to go back and watch it. Irene Paredes kicks right across Ramirez's shin in the box. Ramirez goes flying. She still sort of has control of the ball. Like, the most obvious of penalties, we talked about it last week, and I'm like, so that wasn't a penalty? And I think that the VAR check on that Ramirez one was maybe 10 seconds. Like, right. I mean, like before they showed the replay half a time, and that, you know, the ref had already kind of moved on with the match. So I don't know that it would have mattered, like you said, because obviously these circumstances, you know, Barcelona outshot Chelsea pretty handily. They look like the better team. Ramirez does get injured in the second match, takes the bite completely out of the Chelsea attack, only really emboldens this Barcelona attack. So I think it was going to happen either way, but you just hate to see it happen like that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's going to be a little bit of the story of the game. I think personally, the story of the game for me is still probably going to be Aitana and kind of her dominance. You just kind of feel like whatever they would have needed, she would have been able to produce one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But you just kind of hate for a match to go that way. And Khadija Buchanan, after having a pretty solid first go round with Barcelona, obviously they go there and shut them out. This is a match she's going to want to forget for sure. She's, you know, sort of involved in the Aitana deflection early, the 2 yellow cards. Really good player, just really rough day.
Yeah, hate to see that. Buchanan's an excellent player. Like you said, an absolute beast in the first leg.
Yep.
So to see it go down like that, super unfortunate, especially because of the second yellow. And I think you raised a good point too. And, you know, after I had calmed down, you tend to help me calm down after these things. I had some time to maybe chill out a little bit. But I concede the second yellow, it's still a foul. Like, I totally get that. And so then you'll hear like pundits or players or managers say, if it was a foul and you're already on a yellow and you're really on the line, then you have to be as careful as possible. I can sort of understand that argument. I can understand it intellectually, at least. I think it was unnecessary. I think you call the foul and say, hey, I gave you a yellow 5 minutes ago. One more bad one, and I have to send you off. I think that's typically how you see most refs handle that situation. I got a shout out, friend of the program, Leanne Sanderson, rightly called it in the post-match coverage for DAZN. She said the refereeing was, quote, very poor. And I think that's a fair way to describe it. There was a phantom handball call on Ingrid Egan, like later in the match, where they show the replay. They call it, and I was like, ooh, that was weird. I thought it might have bounced off her stomach or bounced off her chest. And it didn't even do that. It didn't even make contact with her body. And both announcers are just laughing like, yep, didn't make any contact with anything. And it got called a handball. So it was just like really, really rough match for the referee. You hate to see it in a spot like this.
Looking at that Chelsea side, though, definitely felt like, I don't know, however you want to think about it, the football god's not on their side. A little bit snake bitten. Myra Ramirez, that's a tough loss to kind of go into this one. You rewind a little bit. Sam Kerr, Mia Official injured, Millie Bright, who got a little run in this one, but spent most of the Champions League, recuperating the 2 yellow cards, the deflection. Leopolds puts one off the bar. New Skin puts one off the bar. I mean, these are like real chances, and it just kind of just was not going to break Chelsea's way. On the field, though, production-wise, I want to shout out Ashley Lawrence.
Yes.
We kind of talked about, hey, what's the deal with CGH? Do we get a CGH game this game? Turns out, no, because Ashley Lawrence is on the job. She was a menace. She was everywhere. She looked upper world-class type player. The same type of dominant, both defensively, being able to initiate, create offense. The flip side, Lauren James, one of the ITC favorites.
Yeah.
I just do not know what was going on. I think Lauren James kind of benefits from being like 10 or 15 or 20% more clever than her opponents in most spots.
Yeah.
And it just felt like none of that was working. She had one really good ball. And I think one thing I noticed about Barcelona defensively, they shut down the first pass, like completely. Your second and third outlet, they kind of have those covered too. You kind of have to hit your fourth or fifth outlet to like kind of make something happen. Yeah. She had one beautiful ball up the field to Macario. Didn't end up going anywhere, but it was like just a genius ball. But I think those moments were very few and far between. I think Barcelona mentally was at the level of Lauren James. Lauren James usually is able to outsmart most other players.
Yeah.
That was not going to work in this one against this Barcelona side. So very curious to hear what you thought of kind of like Chelsea, what was working, what wasn't working.
Yeah, I'm going to go one more real quick. You shouted out Rolfo and Bronze in the beginning. Rolfo was largely on LJ's side of the field. And so when most of your game is predicated on being 10 to 15% smarter than your opponent, good luck with that against Fridolina Rolfo or Lucy Bronze in other cases.
Yep.
I thought Ingrid Eggen, I mentioned the phantom handball on her, and she's been a target for other squads. I thought she really held her own in this match too.
Yep.
A lot of credit to them, but on the Chelsea side, yeah, I mean, so you got a good match out of Lawrence. I thought you got a pretty good match out of Ritten Cannerud. It wasn't a Cuthbert game. It wasn't an LJ game. It wasn't a Macario game. And we're starting to run out of playmakers here. It wasn't a Newskin. Like, it wasn't one of the games where Newskin bubbles up and creates like big chances for you. So you have to credit Barcelona, but I know that those players in the Chelsea dressing room are kind of looking at themselves going, I wish I could have done 8%, 10% more.
It's like a story kind of as old as sports. When you're the team that's playing from behind a little bit, maybe talent-wise or actually like on the scoreboard, you just kind of have to take advantage of those opportunities. Actually, LJ did have that really nice cross to Leopold's. She puts it on the crossbar, wide open goal. Like, she could have put it pretty much anywhere. And it's one of those things, like, you always hear it. You have to cash in on the opportunities if you want any chance of beating a team like Barcelona.
Yeah. Our guy Dan Johannes tends to chat with us about some of these matches over Twitter while we're watching them. And he said that exactly. I thought he hit the nail on the head too, where it was just like, it's probably a different match if that Leopold's goal goes in early. If somebody's able to capitalize on like one of the half chances that they had, we're looking at a whole different match. And then the crowd at Stamford Bridge is reacting completely different to everything too if they put one in like the first like 40 minutes or something like that. So yeah, it's just like with Barcelona, it's like we talked about with the margin for error. You have to play well. You have to hope to get some near misses from them. And then you have to get some luck on your side. And if you're not checking all three of those boxes, you probably lose 2-0 at home.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think the luck was on Barca's side as well. Obviously they get the call, they get the deflection, a little bit of refereeing luck sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
One last note on Chelsea, I think they kind of just ran out of options, right? Like Kat Macario, like when she's looking the most effective, it's kind of like when everybody's packed into the final third, she could be like really creative and crafty in tight areas. Running the break is kind of like not her game. Like, that's why the Ramirez injury was such a loss.
Yeah.
The only thing I can really think about is maybe some of the substitutions. Emma Hayes, maybe waited just a smidge long to kind of make some big moves there. Barcelona knocks in the penalty in the 75th. Emma Hayes goes to Aggie Beaver-Jones about a minute later. But then she waits till the 84th minute. And I know, she's got to like pack that substitution window. Maybe it's a Millie Bright minutes restriction thing. But 84th minute to bring on Perisset, Fran Kirby, and Millie Bright kind of felt, I mean, obviously this is a desperate moment. So obviously it's going to feel a little bit desperate. But I kind of feel like LJ was so ineffective, and like Fatmob's got like that very handy dandy player rating. Oh, yeah. So LJ was the second lowest Chelsea rated player, only above Khadija Buchanan, who had the game from hell. So that's not great. Maybe you kind of go try a different type of attack a little bit sooner. I would have liked to see maybe like Wrighton, Aggie, and Cannerud play together and like just maybe turn into a little bit of a track meet, see if something happens there. Maybe Fran Kirby kind of trailing, and tough to kind of second guess. Like, for all the talk that we're kind of zooming in on Chelsea and these chances, Baduelo had chances, like Barcelona had other chances. You tend to forget those because they won the match. But again, I think they were the better team. They deserve to go through. I'm not leaving this one feeling too crestfallen with the result.
Yeah, I think, fair result. Cool to see Millie Bright on the pitch, and even cooler to see them have her almost basically play number 9 when they put her on the pitch. I mean, I think a lot was said during the World Cup that she grew up as a number 9, and I'm not sure if it was part of her early playing career. I haven't looked that far into it, but she has the skills to do it, and you already know how dangerous she is with crosses into the box. So thought that was interesting. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I would have liked to see Wrighton, Kirby, and even if you want to put Millie out there, maybe a little earlier. But yeah, to your point, easy to kind of armchair manager it now, but the final piece of the attack was not working for them. So I'm sure Emma Hayes is giving this an awful lot of thought herself, but I think her next job, she has some stuff lined up she has some other things to worry about and other trophies to possibly win.
Hopefully she lands on her feet. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think the story of this one will probably be From a Chelsea standpoint, I'll probably think about the Ramirez injury because she was
Yep.
such a terror at Barcelona. That's kind of like the biggest what if that I'm going to take with me out into the future. But I do want to focus on the defending champs, Barcelona. They're heading to the final. Congratulations to them. Took care of business. What do you think they can take into the final? Like, basically, we've watched this team very, very closely. A lot of Liga F action, a lot of Champions League action. The state that they're in, what do you think they're taking into the final?
Based on the state that they're in the final, but in the semifinal, Selma Betuelo and Caroline Graham Hansen didn't really do a lot in either of those semifinal legs.
Yep.
So I think in the optimistic point of view, well, two of our three best players didn't do much and we got through. But then in the pessimistic take, hey, two of our three best players aren't doing much. What the hell's going on there?
I shouted out earlier, Ashley Lawrence, I think she was a nightmare for CGH to deal with.
Yep.
Looking ahead a little bit to this Lyon side, you could maybe think about an Ellie Carpenter and try to think about what's that matchup going to look like. Baduelo, though, you brought it up last week. Like Aitana had a run, maybe like around the 15, 20-minute mark of the first match, where it's like Aitana, Salma on one wing, CGH on the other, and you're just like, here we go. I kind of feel like maybe there's an opportunity to get back to a little bit more of that, just so you can give yourself a little bit of a runway.
Yeah.
Because Baduelo's game, we've talked about it numerous times on the show. If you could pack the pain on her and have her catch the ball with her back to the goal, she's not as dangerous as she is in the open field, right? Like that's pretty apparent. And she just didn't get those open field opportunities. So you just kind of wonder, Lyon, you got to imagine they're going to have the ball in their attacking third. So there might be more of those chances. Barcelona obviously dominated possession. I think they were in the high 60s in both matches against Chelsea.
Yep.
I don't think that's going to be the case against Lyon. That might actually open up some space for Baduelo. And then CGH, obviously Carpenter's a tough customer, but maybe it's a little bit of a let-off not having to go against Ashley Lawrence.
It'll be interesting to see. Let me just fact check here. So Ellie Carpenter is their right back. So they had Betuelo playing on the left side. So we might get some Betuelo Carpenter matchups.
That'd be tasty.
Yeah, we're in for another track meet. We'll cover the other match when we cover the other match, the Chirwinga Carpenter track meet that was going on there. And so, and then you're going to have on that right side, you have Carpenter. They've been playing Haran over there on the right, and then Diani up front. But Damaris is always going to be kind of in that mix on the counterattack. So that'll be really interesting to see how Barcelona deals with that.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. So I got my sides mixed up. So Carpenter's probably going to be on Baduelo's side, which puts Basha on CGH's side. So now...
Awesome.
The CGH is probably going to be looking at that matchup with a little bit more enthusiasm. I'm going to be interested to see. We talked about a couple of these players. Fridolina Rolfo, Aitana Bonmati, obviously. Kira Walsh, she's kind of rock solid in the middle. Like you don't kind of hear from her, but she is an excellent connector in the middle of the field there. I kind of am getting this feeling that Barcelona is going to need special play from the players that aren't those three. So it's probably like Patri, Guijarro, probably, who knows if like Pina gets in, maybe you got Batier kind of like running up like it kind of feels like somebody else is going to have to unlock something for this Barcelona side. And they're going to need those three in the middle, Rolfo, Walsh, Bonmati, to just do what they do. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we're going to find maybe potentially a difference maker. You hate to kind of call them like ancillary players, but like, they're sort of like the players that they're difference makers or X factors, however you want to think about that. It kind of does feel like, if they get like a Patri goal, from a little bit of distance, a little bit of a stunner, that might send shockwaves to the final.
That's a great call. And at some point, when you have a team full of world beaters, at some point you have to draw a line and refer to the other players as ancillary pieces or role players, whatever you want to call them. So I don't think that's any disrespect to Patri or Fridolina Rolfo or Lucy Bronze, Ona Batier, players who could go to a lot of clubs and immediately be the second or even best player on the side. If you're Lyon, you're gonna have to focus on Bonmati, Betuelo, and CGH. That's just the way it goes. And then pray you don't get beat by one of those other great players.
The first thing I'm going to be looking forward to is like the lineups and the formation, obviously, like just because we've seen some movement from both of these teams. And I think Giralda's really nailed the changes going into the second Chelsea match. You know, they caught some breaks, but I mean, it seemed like the perfect setup and paid dividends pretty early on. So I think Barcelona's got to be feeling really good going into the final for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Just to have made a comeback like that, shut that Chelsea team down at home, and really kept a stranglehold on the match as soon as they equalized. Like, they were just in control of the match. Independent of the scoreboard, they basically were in the driver's seat. So yeah, I think if you're Barcelona, you're probably feeling really, really good.
I think so. That's probably a common phrase throughout most of the history of the club. If you're a Barcelona fan, you're probably feeling pretty good. So you mentioned the formation. It's worth saying that Rolfo was lined up at left back in the first leg against Chelsea. And now obviously it didn't work that great against Chelsea, but I'm curious, do you drift her back in, especially when you have Diani running up that right side? We'll talk more about her from the Lyon match. If you have her streaking down there and you get a lot of one-on-one of her versus Engen, I don't think you like that matchup if you're Barcelona.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can get into that when we talk about the other one, but interested to see what the back line for Barcelona looks like.
100%. We are going to get into the other semifinal where Lyon gets past PSG. Spoiler alert.
What?
Sorry about that. Like if you liked the video, and subscribe if you enjoyed talking little women's Champions League with your boys.
Yeah, tap in, guys. We're going to be talking about the next match, obviously. But you know what? Tip of the beer to Chelsea. We did a postmortem for every other club that has been eliminated through these stages. I mean, what is there left to say about Chelsea? A great squad with a great tradition. Still in it in the WSL. Spoiler alert, you're not going to win the WSL either because Manchester City is going to win it. Sorry to break that to you here. I know you already had a rough go of it. You'll be all right. But other than that, thank you for checking out the show, and we will see you at the final.